Have you ever felt so overwhelmed that you did not even know where to start? I know this has happened to me on multiple occasions. Sometimes things just really get ahead of us, and it's just like, I don't even know what needs done first. I don't know where to go. Do I clean this room? Do I, just write a bunch of stuff down? I don't know what to do. We're going to talk about that some today as we continue our look at the book of Nehemiah and what we can learn, what biblical principles we can learn about planning and managing our homes and all of that stuff. Hi, I'm Heidi Cooper, and this is the Biblical Planning for Women podcast, where we dig right into the scriptures and see what it has to teach us about planning and stewarding our time and managing our homes and our families. So let's continue in our book of Nehemiah study. And thus far, we've looked at how Nehemiah, when he was faced with very distressing news, the first thing he did was pray. And then he asked for help. He went to the king and he asked for help. Both important lessons for us to learn from. And now as he gets back to Jerusalem, we're going to pick up the story and see what he does next when he is faced with this huge task of rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. Let's take a look in chapter 2 and see what the next steps, the plan of attack is going to be for Nehemiah and what we can learn from it. And I'm going to pick it up in verse 10 just to get us started. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 10, and it says, "But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel." As soon as he got back to Jerusalem, literally the first thing he faced was opposition. I mean, it's really unbelievable. Here he's coming to do good for the people, help rebuild the wall to protect them, because at that time in the world, walled cities equaled safety, and they didn't have it. Yet when he gets back here to Jerusalem, these people are enemies of Israel, and they have major issue with Nehemiah, and that he is there and daring to try to help the people of Jerusalem. And that is a theme that we see throughout Scripture and just in life. Is when you set out to do a good thing, usually the first thing you find is opposition or setback, something goes wrong. It's very, very common. The first thing you see is disruption. And this is what Nehemiah faced. I think often when we, as women, we set out to make improvements in our home or try a new routine or actually get the meals planned, or whatever it is you are undertaking to do to make things better, sometimes the first thing we find is that things get difficult, or someone says, forget it, why are you even trying? Or even that voice in your head, it might be saying, why are you even bothering? You've tried this before, it's not worth it. And sometimes I think that voice in our head can be the worst and the harshest, but we need to remember that when we undertake to do something good, we have good intentions and we want to make an improvement, we need to remind ourselves that opposition usually follows. It's not telling you that you're on the wrong track or give up or just don't even try. It's just part of life and it's to be expected. And we keep going in the same direction even when opposition happens. And that's what Nehemiah did. He knew there would be probably opposition, and he did not let that deter him from what he had set out to do. Again, it doesn't mean you're on the wrong path or you're just going to make a mistake and screw it up. It just means that you have a good intention, and that's what usually follows. Now, when Nehemiah got there, he had to deal with the opposition, but he also was there to build the wall. And he took an interesting approach. I'd like to keep reading from verse 11 for you and see how Nehemiah handled this. So we know he's facing opposition. Now, how is he going to handle building the wall? Well, it says, "So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me but the one on which I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dung gate, and I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but there was no room for the animal that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall, and I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, and I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work. So the first thing that Nehemiah does is carefully inspect what was going on. He didn't assume that he knew the condition of the walls. He didn't guess. He wanted to know exactly what he was dealing with. So without any pomp and circumstance, he didn't make a big deal. He didn't tell everyone what he was doing. He just quietly went out and took careful note of the actual condition of the wall around Jerusalem. And that is an important part of planning, is knowing exactly what you're dealing with. It's being honest with the reality, not what you think is going on or assuming, but what is actually going on. And I think sometimes we as women can do that. We can either make things way bigger than they actually are, or we say, this room is messy, the whole house is trashed. Or we're feeling really overwhelmed, but we haven't taken a few minutes to determine what is actually overwhelming us and breaking it down. And before we can actually fix any problems or make any progress or move forward, we have to honestly look at the situation in front of us to get an honest picture of where we are. Not where the neighbor is, not where our friends are, not where we are assuming we are, or like I said, sometimes we might be a bit dramatic and make it seem much worse in our mind than what it actually is. We need to get an actual realistic picture. And this is an important thing that we can learn from Nehemiah, is that he took the time to honestly survey the walls. And he also, like I said, he didn't make a big announcement about it. He just quietly walked around and like, okay, I see, like one of the places, if you caught it, it was so broken down that the animal he was riding on couldn't even fit. So it was pretty bad, but he had to honestly look at it. And then an important thing to remember is that he did not then just, boom, build the wall. He took the time to identify what needed done, and then he started building the wall. And that's important for us to do as well. When we walk through our home, we need to be honest about what is or isn't working, what needs to be fixed or cleaned up. And I want to encourage you to actually, this is going to be our action steps today, is to honestly take stock of what's going on. Not a mental list. We don't want to keep things in our head. We've learned that. We want to get it down on paper. So take your planner, take a notebook, and actually go through and write things down. I remember reading an article years ago. This woman actually kept a small, like a motel, like a mom and pop motel. And she said the way that they kept everything taken care of and cleaned is they actually used a clipboard. And they would walk through and just write down everything that needed done. Then it could be checked off. It could be delegated to other people so that everything could be handled. So that's kind of like what we want to do. We want to take our planner or a notebook and just write things down. And some things you'll find, yep, that definitely needs to be handled right now. Like often the kitchen needs to be tackled before other things. But then you actually have stock of what it is, and some ideas of what you might see is maybe you're noticing that this is where all the piles of paper are landing and they're becoming a permanent resident there. Maybe you're seeing a breakdown in the laundry system that could be addressed. Maybe the entryway is always cluttered with boots and nobody's picking up their coats. Maybe there's stress over mealtime, or there's unfinished projects that you'd like to see taken care of. So just take stock. Write it down. Now it's out of your head. You're not guessing about what does or does not need done. And then you can break down a plan to start solving things, but it doesn't all have to be done today. This is more of a gathering information step. And that's an important thing to do. We can learn that from Nehemiah because he took the time to survey and figure out what exactly needed done. And here's the important thing I want you to do that would differ from, say, the woman running the motel. I want you to take that list and then spend some time praying over it and ask God to show you what deserves your attention first, what would make the most impact. Similar to what we were talking about when we were looking at Nehemiah at the beginning of chapter 2, asking for help, asking for advice, asking for someone that's a little more on the outside to say what would make the most impact. So we want to spend some time in prayer as well as we're surveying the situation. So as Nehemiah is doing this and he starts to build the wall, of course, we see the opposition show up again. And it's if we learn to just be prepared that it's going to happen, that some opposition is inevitable, I think we'd be better prepared for it. So that's something I want you to be thinking on, that things sometimes there's wrinkles, and just be ready for it. And as Nehemiah was faced with opposition again, he was confident in the job, but he was not confident in himself. And I love this verse. I just want to point it out to you. And it's verse 20. He replied and said, "The God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will arise and build." So his confidence was not in, we're going to build this wall. His confidence was in Yah, who was going to prosper their important job of protecting Jerusalem again. So we want to be trusting in Yah to help us. He's where our confidence comes from. It's not a planner. It's not a meal planning system. It's not how many laundry baskets you have. It's the one who created us and asks us to be faithful stewards. That's what I want you to remember. So if you are kind of feeling like Nehemiah that you need to take stock, I want you to just take some time, walk through, take an honest look, and then pray about it. Write things down. Ask God to show you what that next faithful step is going to be. And remember, he did not build that wall in a day. It was a little bit at a time. It took him 52 days. So give yourself some breathing space there. Because one brick at a time, one stone at a time, walls are built, homes are strengthened. All right. We're going to spend some more time with Nehemiah next week. But in the meantime, if today's episode was encouraging, I would love if you took a minute to leave a review, subscribe, share this podcast with your friends so that they can be encouraged as well. And in the notes below, you'll find a link to monthly verse lists that I hope will be a blessing to you as we're adding verses to our planners to encourage us throughout the week. You will also find my biblical planning starter kit that is full of all kinds of resources to get you started in this journey of planning and stewarding and building up your home. So just be faithful, look for that next step in front of you, and go ahead and take that. So I will see you next time as we look at Nehemiah on the Biblical Planning for Women podcast. Bye-bye.